Good afternoon, Dr. Abante. Good afternoon, classmates. This is Roland Arguez. I'll be reporting on Chapter 20, Part 2, the Economic Perspectives in Advanced Strategic Management. The Industrial Organization, or IO, view of strategy assumes that the external environment determines the actions a firm can deploy. Industrial organization is a field of economics dealing with the strategic behavior of firms, regulatory policy, antitrust policy, and market competition. The study of industrial organization builds on the theory of the firm as a set of economic theories that describe, explain, and attempt to predict the nature of a firm in terms of existence, behavior, structure, and its relationship to the market. The implication of the IO model for strategic management is that firms identify and seek to operate in environments that provide the best opportunities for competitiveness and profitability. Since the IO model is concerned on the external environment, its main concerns are the four industry structures, which are perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic competition, and oligopoly. The strategic conduct of the firm revolves around policies such as maximization or optimization of profit levels, growth, sales, and marginal utility. Second, by pricing objectives such as cost plus, marginal cost, entry deterring price, collusive pricing, price leadership, and price discrimination. Third conduct would be the marketing strategies and advertising, and lastly, the extent of innovation and technical change. When measuring performance, strategists and economists focus on profitability, efficiency, product quality, and technical progress. The industrial organization economics perspective has been challenged by the opposing view of strategy, which is the resource-based view of the firm, which I will be discussing at the end of this presentation. The second economic perspective under strategic management is the game theory perspective. Game theory provides insights for analyzing situations in which parties, called players, make decisions that are interdependent. This interdependence causes each player to consider the other player's possible decisions or strategies in formulating their own strategy. They observe that economics is much like a game wherein players anticipate each other's moves and therefore requires a new kind of mathematics, which they call the game theory. The game theory has been used, for example, to determine what political coalitions or business conglomerates are likely to form, the optimal price at which to sell products or services in the face of competition, the power of a voter or a block of lobbyists, and the best site for a manufacturing plant. The third economic perspective under strategic management is the agency theory perspective. Agency theory addresses vertical links of ownership and control at multiple levels across the borders of firms and within the firm's boundaries. Classically, strategists have focused upon the narrow hierarchical relationship between investors or principals and top-level executives or the agents, on the basis that this relationship is related directly to firm strategy and outcome. However, more recent research has focused upon the implications of a more extended set of agency relationships, both vertically and horizontally. Still under agency theory are the terms corporate governance and corporate strategy. In corporate governance, the central concern of corporate governance is the relationship among stakeholders that is used to determine and control the strategic direction and performance of the firm. Four main mechanisms exist which influence the extent to which an agency relationship may be controlled and monitored, and these are 1. The monitoring capacity of investors, 2. The influence of the board of directors, 3. Setting executive compensation, and 4. The market for corporate control. Under corporate strategy, top managers expect their corporate level strategy to help their firm gain or maintain a competitive advantage and earn above average returns for their shareholders and themselves. The business in their portfolio should be worth more through their management than if they stood on their own. The central concerns for corporate strategies are: number one, which businesses should their firm be in and should be exiting? And two, how to manage a business portfolio which may be in a very different industry, product, and geographic areas. This raises questions about the extent to which a firm should diversify, and here the benefits to managers and owners can vary and potentially lead to an agency problem. Under the economic perspectives is the resource-based view, or the RBV model. The RBV mod view is a model that sees resources as key to superior firm performance. If a resource exhibits positive attributes for value, rarity, inimitability, and organization, the resource enables the firm to gain and sustain competitive advantage. RBV is an approach to achieving competitive advantage that emerged in the 1980s and 1990s. The supporters of this view argue that organizations should look inside the company to find the sources of competitive advantage instead of looking at competitive environment for it. According to RBV proponents, it is much more feasible to exploit external opportunities using existing resources in a new way rather than trying to acquire new skills for each different opportunity. In RBV model, resources are given the major role in helping companies to achieve higher organizational performance. In resource-based view model, competitive advantage can be attained by maximizing the use of both the tangible and intangible resources. Tangible resources or tangible assets are the physical things like land, building, machinery, equipment, and capital. All of these are tangible because they are physical resources that can be easily bought in the market, so they can confer little advantage to the companies in the long run because rivals can soon acquire the identical assets. Intangible assets, on the other hand, are everything else that has no physical presence but can still be owned by the company, like brand reputation, trademarks, intellectual property, and the likes. Unlike physical resources, brand reputation is built over a long time and is something that other companies cannot buy from the market. Intangible resources usually stay within a company and are the main source of sustainable competitive advantage. Resources may be classified as heterogeneous or immobile. Heterogeneous resources are skills, capabilities, and other resources that organizations possess, differing from one company to another. If organizations would have the same amount and mix of resources, they could not employ different strategies to outcompete each other. What one company would do, the other could simply follow and no competitive advantage could be achieved. This is the scenario of perfect competition. Yet, in real-world markets, they are far from perfectly competitive, and some companies, which are exposed to the same external and competitive forces, are able to implement different strategies and outperform each other. Therefore, RBV assumes that companies achieve competitive advantage by using their different bundles of resources. The competition between Apple and Samsung is a good example of how two companies that operate in the same industry and thus are exposed to the same external forces can achieve different organizational performance due to the differences in resources. Apple competes with Samsung in tablets and smartphone markets where Apple sells its product at much higher prices, and as a result, reaps higher profit margin. Now, why does Samsung not follow the same strategy? Simply because Samsung does not have the same brand reputation or is capable to design user-friendly products like Apple does. Immobile resources, on the other hand, are resources that are not mobile and do not move from company to company, at least in the short run. Due to this immobility, companies cannot replicate rivals' resources and implement the same strategies. Intangible resources such as brand equity, processes, knowledge, or intellectual property are usually immobile. A company's competitive strategy could also be formulated depending on how it stands in the VRIO framework. The VRIO stands for value, rarity, imitability, and organization. For questions of value, resources are valuable if they help organizations to increase the value offered to the customers. This is done by increasing differentiation and or decreasing the cost of the production. The resources that cannot meet this condition lead to competitive disadvantage. Next step would be to question the rarity. Resources that can only be acquired by one or few companies are considered rare. When more than few companies have the same resource or capability, it results in competitive parity. Questions of imitability is when a company that has a valuable and rare resource can achieve at least temporary competitive advantage. However, the resource must also be costly to imitate or to substitute for a rival. If a company wants to achieve sustained competitive advantage, it must be, or this resource must be difficult for one company to achieve. And lastly, the question to ask is for the question of organization. The resources itself do not confer any advantage for a company if it is not organized to capture the value from them. Only the firm that is capable to exploit the valuable, rare, and imitable resources can achieve sustained competitive advantage. As I have mentioned earlier, the industrial organization view is opposed by the resource-based view because the RBV or the resource-based view holds that sustained competitive advantage can be achieved more easily by exploiting internal rather than external factors as compared to the IO view. While this is correct to some degree, there isn't a definite answer to which approach to strategic management is more important. The chart on the right shows that the different factors can have significant effects on the firm. This indicates that the best approach is to look into both external and internal factors and combine both views to achieve and sustain competitive advantage. This is the end of my report. Thank you for listening.